Hey guys, Scripted here with another video, and I saw this little tidbit, which was really cool, and it's really an interesting thing on so many levels because of the direction Star Wars has gone since Disney took over. You know, many people, myself included, we wonder what would it have been like if George had held on to it. Now we kind of get an idea of where he was going, and I'm both intrigued and critical, actually, of where he was going to go. But it brings up so many questions. It's so interesting. So we had over 60 scripts. Producer reveals details on scrapped Star Wars project that would have changed the franchise forever. Interesting, okay. Star Wars has made the transition to being a television franchise over the last few years, which I think was a mistake. Alas, and as the IP gears up for a return to the big screen, fans get a retrospective on what could have been the franchise's first and vastly different medium switch. Star Wars started on and shone bright on the big screen for the majority of its existence, being to theatrical releases what Doctor Who and Star Trek were to television. That's right, exactly. This would eventually change after the sequel trilogy, with the franchise moving to primarily Disney Plus IP, thanks to the path forged by The Mandalorian. Well, partially. It's a business decision. It was just, we're starting Disney Plus. We need Star Wars content when we launch this thing. And so instead of doing the Boba Fett movie, we're going to do the Mandalorian show and make Boba Fett the Mandalorian. I don't know why they did that. Maybe George Lucas gets royalties from the original characters. Whatever. Anyway. So that's what they decided to do, and like I've always said, unfortunately it was a huge success the first season, and therefore they ended up making like 50 bazillion shows, and now it's watered down and crappy, because again, it's all about the business decisions, not the creative decisions. Several years and shows later, the franchise is now poised to once again make a shift in medium, led once more by The Mandalorian and Grogu, and the streaming era has been so prominent that the upcoming movies can learn from the TV and streaming services. It hasn't really been prominent, though. The ratings just continue to decline. Even Mando Season 3 didn't do very good. And the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is Mandalorian Season 4. That's literally what it is. It's about Embo and Jabba the Hutt's son, which are characters from Clone Wars. And then Mandalorian has to stop Embo from assassinating Rhoda. Remember that little slug guy from Clone Wars? It's literally, it's an extended Clone Wars episode that they're making into a movie. That doesn't mean there couldn't be some cool stuff in there. I'm not saying that. But I don't know. I'm not super thrilled about what we know about the plot thus far. It's looking meh. But anyway, it's a TV show that they're now just putting on into a movie. One season of a TV show into a movie. And I've said this in previous videos. How do you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel that have Disney Plus, that now Disney expects you to pay to go to a movie theater to see Mandalorian and Grogu Season 4? When you already pay for your monthly subscription on Disney Plus, does that make you feel good? Just saying, it's pretty kind of sleazy. In the audio clip made available by young indie chroniclers on YouTube, the eponymous podcast hosted Star Wars producer Rick McCallum, and the exec gave some details about Star Wars Underworld. I had heard about this, but it kind of was sort of in passing. A failed George Lucas project that the franchise director and a large team worked on for ABC. I think we had over 60 scripts, third draft scripts with the most wonderful writers in the world. So they had scripts that were pretty close to being ready to go for these episodes of the show. McCallum revealed. But if you don't know who Rick McCallum is, he's very involved with Star Wars, with George Lucas, and prequels, everything. And these were dark, they were sexy, and they were violent. Just absolutely wonderful, complicated, and challenging. It would have blown up the whole Star Wars universe, and Disney definitely would have never offered to buy that. It's one of those great disappointments of our lives. These details are truly eye-opening. This is an interesting thing, and you have to wonder how much of this was George responding to the negativity about the childishness of the prequels. So then he's swinging the pendulum all the way over here into sort of a very adult Star Wars version of Star Wars. He is kind of a reactionary guy that way. He does get his feelings kind of hurt. Which is kind of a lot of artsy creative people are like that. They tend to take things to heart a lot. They shouldn't, but they do. That's just their personalities. Not all of them, but a good percentage of them. And so I wonder if that was it, sort of in response to the sort of Jar Jar Binks, dumb, kiddish stuff and sort of the childishness of the sequels with the battle droids. People criticized the way they talked and how childish they were, and so you kind of wonder if that's what this was. It's interesting though, because we do have Andor now, which is the more sort of adult Star Wars. That's not to say kids couldn't get into it. They could, I guess. It's a little slow. I'm not sure. I haven't plopped my kids in front of it. I don't think my daughter would watch it. She's a teenager. She's not going to watch some Star Wars thing, but maybe my son would try it. He's 11. I don't know if an 11-year-old would get into Andor or not. It's hard to say. It's a little slow maybe for him. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he'd be into like the scenes with Mon Mothma, her little get-togethers and the stuff they're talking about. I think he'd be pretty bored. But so we do have Andor, and then this guy is saying that Disney probably doesn't purchase Star Wars if they go down this road prior to that time, and that's probably true. I don't know what to think of this if they had gone down this road of like sexy, violent, dark version of Star Wars. I don't know. I probably would have complained about it, honestly, because it's not really Star Warsy. Star Wars is a family entertainment thing. And keep in mind, too, that this was being developed after George said that Star Wars was for kids. See, a lot of people say, oh, George said Star Wars is for 12-year-old boys. That's why, there's nothing wrong with, what they're doing with this, and this. You have to understand, again, he's a defense mode type of guy. He was being criticized for how childish the prequels were. He didn't say Star Wars was for 12-year-olds in the 70s. He said it after Phantom Menace came out. And people were like, what the heck did we just watch? This is for babies. And then he came out and said, oh, well, Star Wars is for kids. Even though it was a family thing. It wasn't just for kids. As if kids would have any clue about, like, the dynamic between Leia and Han and all that type of stuff. Like, those weren't kid scenes. It's just he was defending himself. And so for him to come out with this, if he had, that would have been a direct contradiction of that statement anyway, which proves that statement was just a defense mechanism. The other thing I was looking into is what's interesting too is this kind of falls in line with the 1313 Star Wars game that was going to come out. And it's interesting how that all sort of dissolved, right? That game never came out. It had a really cool trailer. And they never released it. And that would have probably went along with this because it's kind of the 1313 is kind of the underground Coruscant thing. And that's what this is about. McCallum, who's attached to the project alongside many others between 2010 and the show's cancellation in 2012, during the Disney purchase, also revealed why the project never took off. The problem was each episode was bigger than the films. So the lowest I could get it down to with the technology that existed then was about $40 million an episode. Well, that doesn't sound too bad right now with what Disney's spending on these shows that are crappy. 40 mil for an underground, dark, gritty. I think. See, the thing is, if you're gonna go underground and gritty, go all the way, which it sounds like this was gonna go, like full adult. Andor doesn't push that envelope. It goes kind of in the quasi middle zone. So if you're gonna go all the way, go all the way. And I think if they had spent $40 million an episode, they would have recouped that very easily. I do. I'm not saying I would have liked it, but I think they would have. I think the adults in the room would have been like, woo! There's a lot of people I know that would have liked to have seen this. There's a lot of people that want to see R-rated Star Wars. I'm pretty sure even Star Wars Theory has said he wants to see something like that. A lot of people would have loved this. So, and again, $40 million. I mean, look what they're spending now. Leslie Headland's Acolyte show, how many episodes did it have again? Like 8? And they spent $250 million just on the budget, and probably more than that. So, I mean, this is actually, that's the exact same amount of money. Would you rather see The Acolyte or this? While this sounds like a major loss, it was also a risky prospect. The show sounds conceptually similar to the Star Wars movie that Zack Snyder tried to get made around the same period when Lucasfilm was sold to Disney, which eventually came to fans as his Rebel Moon franchise. Rebel Moon it felt adulty. I didn't even watch the second one because the first one was so bad, but it also felt just corny. I don't know. It didn't. This sounds more like Star Wars Underground, Coruscant, underneath everything, not, flying griffins and stuff. I don't know. Rebel Moon, I don't know. Super violent, but that exercise over at Netflix serves as compelling proof that Disney canning that film was the right choice, and might even be indicative of how Star Wars Underworld would have played out if it had come across the screens without some sort of buffer. I disagree. No. Underground Coruscant would have been way cooler than what Rebel Moon is. No matter how much fans might age, the idea that such a drastic switch in tone could be good for the franchise seems misguided at best and reckless at worst. And again, I don't disagree with that totally either. As much as I think people would have loved that, there would have been people that didn't as well. I'm not sure. It wouldn't really feel very Star Wars. But what Disney's done is worse. I mean, it doesn't feel Star Wars at all half the time. It's just terrible. While that opportunity is long gone now, there's still hope for the franchise to touch on something similar with some proper planning and intentionality. There are an abundance of stories in Legends continuity that are more mature and should be made Star Wars canon to transition the franchise in a more adult direction in increments. While there's certainly a reality where fans are ready for Star Wars Underworld straight off the prequel trilogy, it's not this one, and that hasn't changed much with the sequels. If Disney is willing to prove McCallum wrong, there's definitely a way to go. No, but that's just it. That's the problem, though, is no one has hit that lightning in a bottle since the original trilogy, not even George. Okay? Where the original trilogy was for everybody. You could bring your kids, you could bring your 6-year-old to it. It's a little scary at the very end with the Emperor and stuff, but you could. I saw it when I was a little kid. You could also sit there as an old man and watch it and find it interesting. Any age. And a big reason for that is they didn't try to be too childish. They also didn't try to be too adult, but they just were real. And the characters themselves and the way they interact with each other is so interesting. That's what makes Star Wars so good. The space stuff's cool and all that, but the characters and the way they bounce off of each other and the way they learn from each other and their relationships and the humor and the agony and the ecstasy, right? All the different things in the middle. That's what makes it so good. Luke and Vader's relationship, the Emperor and Vader's relationship, all that stuff is what makes Star Wars so good. But what the focus has been on these, we want to make a show this style. Oh, we want to make a show this style. And then they're pigeonholing themselves into these different types of styles or genres. And none of them have felt like original trilogy, family-friendly, fun, awesome characters, emotional roller coaster projects. None of them. None of them have hit that lightning in the bottle. Not even the prequels. They don't. Because the Phantom Menace, although it has some phenomenal, the Darth Maul fight scenes and some of that stuff is really amazing, there's also that corny, cheesy childishness to it that goes too far that way. Then in Attack of the Clones, with the love story and all that focus on that, and it's not as character-driven as it needed to be. Then you get to the Revenge of the Sith, it's a lot darker, and it's the best of the three, but it still lacks that character stuff. We want an Anakin spend half an hour fighting. It's less character driven again, and I think George missed that in that trilogy. It's still an okay trilogy, but it's nothing compared to the originals. It just isn't. Nothing is. So this, I think, would have fallen into that category too, as much as it does sound super cool, and this is a super interesting thing to discuss today. I do think it would fall into that, like, why are you making this so different for? And again, are you doing this to compensate because people said your prequels had too much childishness in them? I know that, Anakin kills the sand people and there's this sort of darkness about it. Like, the darkness in the OT it's not for the sake of it. Like, it's not like the Emperor's darkness is himself, not what he does, I guess is what I'm saying. But then in Attack of the Clones, Anakin's dark, it's dark when he kills it's quote dark when he kills the sand people because he does this act. But he doesn't feel dark at all. Like, he feels corny through the entire movie. So, Vader's dark because he's dark, because of what he says, his ideology. It's not just what he's doing, right? And again, that's, I guess, how I was trying to explain it, where George kind of missed the boat there a little bit. But anyways, really cool, really interesting thing to discover here. And what do you guys think if they had made this? Like, would you have been into it or not? Or what? What do you think of this? Let me know in the comment section what you think, and if you like this content, please like and subscribe, man. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check out anything else on my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.